The mayoral race is super, super, super important. And yet, if you right now go to some polling places, you could do that proverbial fire a cannon and you wouldn't hit anybody. The LA Times telling us that voter turnout has been low. Many voting places are empty. I guess here's my question for you. Do you care? Do we care? Peter Mathews is with me. He, of course, as you know, professor, Cypress College, 30 years in education, born into a family of educators, worked with him often at KNBC, and now, of course, a commentator heard all over the place. Professor, thank you for being with us.
How are you doing, David?
Great, and by the way, congratulations in your bid for Congress, my brother.
That was, thank you, I did okay.
Yeah, you did. I mean, you know what? It teaches you the rough and tumble sport of politics, doesn't it?
It sure does, and there's nothing like a real-world laboratory, Dave, not just a classroom. We connect the classroom with a real-world laboratory, you know?
That certainly does. Okay, so Peter, you've been in the ring. You have gone through that sweat, those last hours, the big final push. The polls had Garcetti and Greuel at a virtual dead heat, a statistical tie. Do you really see anybody breaking out of the pack? I didn't. What do you think?
No, I really don't. I'm pretty much sure that it's going to be Garcetti and Greuel together in the runoff on May 21st. And the numbers are pretty well going to stay where they are, even though many voters were not sure how they're going to vote. But those numbers, I think, are going to hold. No one's going to get 50% plus one, which is what they would need to win outright.
Absolutely. What do you think this also says about the voters in Los Angeles, that voter turnout has been so low? Is it the midterm kind of a feeling early because there isn't some huge national race getting people out, or we just don't really relate to the mayor and council? What do you think?
Yeah, it's part of that is that it's election an off year, as some cities had, and some states. New Jersey has an off-year election also, and turnout's always lower in the non-presidential, non-congressional year. Secondly, though, it's very unusual. It's very usual, but very strange that so many Americans don't vote in city council races, local races, even though that's the government that's closest to them. It's a real shame. You know, turnouts are always pretty low. So 20% in L.A. Well, when Villaraigosa ran, Mayor Villaraigosa, the turnout was much higher. It was 35%, I believe. So it should be about 20%
yeah,
this time.
I think Villaraigosa ignited at that time some interest because the race had kind of crystallized, it seemed to me, to two big candidates. Here you've got, it's almost like a herd running for office, a field, I know they say. Don't you get the sense that our attention has somewhat been divided and subdivided by all of the candidates still in the field? You know, it is the primary, after all.
That's part of it. It's the first round, and there are 5 candidates, and, you know, many unknown candidates, like, I don't want to mention them right now, but
right.
The thing is, these offices are very important, Dave. As you know, the city accounts for police and fire protection, for producing energy with DWP, also for, keeping up our infrastructure. And there's so much that affects people directly, clean water, all kinds of things, roads. And yet people have not been voting very high turnout. And I think it's extremely important to note the numbers here. I mean, look at police officers, for example. Los Angeles has 10,000 police officers in a population of 3.8 million people. New York City has 34,000 police officers with 8 million people. And the cities are about the same square mile, so we have understaffed as far as police officers go. And that's going to cost money, of course, and the city council could put the money up. I would say we need community-based police officers on the street, walking the beat, talking to young people, referring them to...
Yeah, I would agree with you, Peter. I would agree with you, but if you read the report by Miguel Santana, the city's administrative officer, he's projecting a $1.2 billion shortfall, and he says we've got to find places to cut, and you're saying we need to have more staffing in the ranks. I know the chief wants to see that half-cent sales tax approved, but I'm reading some of the initial reactions in the field. Proposition A, let me tell you, it doesn't sound very encouraging.
Well, it's been going back and forth. Initially, it was very low support for Prop A, but then this last week's poll showed about 53% supporting it, and that was because the unions and other groups went ahead and advertised for it. Prop A will be a half a cent increase in the sales tax. It'll put it at the highest level of all the cities in California, I believe. but it'll still bring in some money. I frankly think that, you've got to get the funding somewhere, and none of these candidates are telling us where they're going to get the funding.
Well,
none of them support that sales tax either.
Peter, they're not only not telling us where they're going to get the funding, and you bring up a good point, they're also not telling us what we're going to do about the pension deficits that we're currently seeing, because we're not just going over the cliff, we're going to go deep into the depths of the ocean. So, I mean...
this is going to be a fiscal
what is it? I mean, so you help me. Not only are voters skeptical about where we are right now, they're really uncertain about how we're going to fill that requirement. What do you think?
I think that's the major problem is funding. And, the federal government and state government have been cutting back on local city funding. See, unlike in European countries where the central government provides a lot of money for cities and allows cities to operate in a way that they kind of have a direction to the local population, local businesses, and they work together to create a good quality of life. In this country, the cities are pretty much on their own. They don't get a whole lot of money, and the money they get from the feds and state is very uncertain. So, New York City,
but in some of those European cities, with all my respect to you, Professor, we also have tax rates that are quite higher than they are even in America.
That's true, but we pay more taxes than they do in terms of numbers of taxes, because we have the state tax, the federal tax, we got Social Security tax, Medicare tax, all that stuff adds up. In Europe, they pay a lot of higher rate of taxes, but they have fewer taxes overall. And still they get let me tell you what else is going on here. Our defense budget is so bloated, David, that we spent $800 billion as of 2 years ago. Now we're down to about $700 billion. That's equal to all the 10 countries behind us put together, and China spends 1/10 of what we spend. So put some of that money into the cities, I would say.
Well, you're going to, at that point, you're going to anger many of the contractors who say that they are creating jobs. I would like to see, like you, more emphasis on domestic spending being focused on cities, on infrastructure. We've got lousy freeways. We've got problems with, I made it one of my big pitches, thousands of lights burned out throughout the city of L.A., no crews to replace them. We've got brush pickup that's months behind. I mean, you've got a lot of issues like this. And you've got
sidewalks falling apart, even in Long Beach, where I live.
And no left turn signals, and that's been one of my big, complaints. I was going to say something else because I've seen
that's infrastructure. We need infrastructure, David. The money has to be brought in. I think that we should bring in some federal and state money by closing those corporate tax loopholes.
All right. You're sounding now like we're going back into the national thing. I get it, but let's come back here. I want to ask you this.
Right, let's talk about this. Yeah.
No, I mean, come on. The funding for many of these candidates comes from the unions, and that's fine. But do you really think that the unions are thinking about services, or are they thinking about their salaries, their benefits, their pensions? Is it really about the services? Because taxpayers are having difficulty believing that every time we dodge a pothole and we try not to stumble over a cracked and raised sidewalk.
Yeah, absolutely. There are special interests that give money to campaigns, not just unions, but also some of the developers and others who want to have tax breaks and want to have the best development for their own pocketbooks and not for the quality of life in the city. I think we got to do something like get people into office who are not beholden to these wealthy special interests, Dave, and that means grassroots politics. But look at the millions that these folks are spending on these campaigns right now.
Yeah,
the candidates for mayor and for city council.
That desire that you and I both have seems to contradict or be contradicted by, as you pointed out, where the big money is coming into these coffers right now. So do you have any projections yet? Do you have any projections on what the voter turnout is expected to be today?
Yes. I have a good feeling it's going to be a bad feeling. It's going to be about 20% or maybe just above that.
20%, huh?
Which is just unbelievable, isn't it? But yet that's the standard for a lot of cities. I mean, the Villaraigosa election was the exception. Everyone got excited about two major candidates and a new change. But here's the thing. The turnout's going to be very low compared to in past years. And furthermore, I do believe it's going to be Greuel and Garcetti in the final runoff on May 21st.
No, I do believe that. So let me just ask you a couple of other points because I don't often grab somebody like you to be on the show, and that's this. We are also looking, in addition to the tax, the Proposition A, we've got the city attorney's race, we've got the controller's race also going on. But I want to focus on the Trutanich proposal today, where he said, and here we are, election day, and this thing comes out, that he's favoring removal of any ammo clips that are greater than 10 rounds. In other words, he wants to see those clips that are larger than that considered to be illegal. Election ploy or serious discussion on gun control? Your take.
It's coming out on election day, so I wonder about the motive, but I think it's a good proposal because New York State passed the best gun control or gun regulation law just last month, and they came out with a 10-clip maximum. I think that's important to do that. And at the federal level, we're having trouble even getting a universal background check passed, Dave. There's a big controversy about that, where we should pass it in a minute. So I think Tertange's proposal is well taken. It came on the last day of the election, but let's see what happens.
Or better late than never, perhaps. I think
absolutely,
though,
always better late than never, yeah.
Gun rights advocates are already telling us that they're going to challenge any move by a city to pass an ordinance like this, and I do think that eventually the debate has to be decided at the federal level. So,
yes.
As you look forward, the city of Los Angeles, does it play a different role, you think, now economically in America? Do you think new leadership under someone like let's say, Greuel, and I'm going to start off with her more than Garcetti, although they both might be fiscally stronger than Villaraigosa, who came from labor. What do you think their fiscal stance is going to be? Or do you expect any change? Because Greuel has really made a big deal of all the money she has saved the city of Los Angeles.
That's right. She was very telling us all about her savings when she was the controller. And her main theme to fix the fiscal solution is to cut out, eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse, she says. But that's not very specific. And yet she identified, millions of dollars of it. But how about retrieving those millions of dollars? That's part of it. Maybe now, if she becomes mayor, she'll have a chance to actually go after that money and bring it in. I think Garcetti says he's going to be working with unions to work out pension problems, to reduce, to streamline pensions and to reduce deficit problems that way. Now, let's see what these people are actually going to do, because this, to me, is very general. They need to be more specific. Where is the money going to be brought in, and where are we going to cut the waste? That's the key right there, Dave. And there's a lot of work to be done. It'll be very interesting to watch them.
Well, no matter what happens, and you've already predicted, and I agree with you, that Garcetti and Greuel go into the next round, they're not going to take any breath. I mean, they've got to keep going.
Absolutely. Let me mention one more thing. In the school board races, there's a national focus on them right now. The entire nation's watching, and there's money coming from outside.
Oh, yes.
For two sets of candidates. One that would be for increased funding in classrooms and supporting the public system. Another one for pushing more school choice, as well as using student test scores and evaluations.
Yeah.
And those kinds of controversies are there, and the two sets of candidates on either side in the three people running.
Peter Mathews, thank you so much, sir, for being on the show with us. And, again, I think your wealth of experience in the classroom and in the political limelight certainly lends a lot of credibility. Thanks again for being here, sir.
Thank you so much, David. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
As we turn the corner, we're also going to speak with someone about a